Our teacher was born and raised in Massachusetts. She has a background in human resources, recruiting for several different companies over the years, like MetLife, Stanley Bostitch, Cox Communications, Amgen Biotechnology, and several others. She was doing human resources, looking for fishing as fishers of men, I guess you might say, in a different context, looking for people. And she says she's always had a love for children and the elderly, and did children's fellowship ministry for several years. Now she lives in Kettering, and she works as a caregiver. I've always thought of Marilyn as a spirit-filled, stable believer. She has a spiritual equilibrium of faithfulness that she has carried for decades of her life, and has given her life in service to God's people her whole adult life. And so I really appreciate that spirit-filled stability that she brings. And I'd like you just to go ahead and stand. We'll skip the song. We don't need another song. Marilyn, would you come on up? Marilyn Parker, Pastor Marilyn Parker. Goodness, yes. Praise.
Oh my goodness, have a seat. So, certainly thankful to be standing here in front of you and have the opportunity to teach God's Word. I want to especially thank Pastor Tanya for having confidence and trust in me to stand here in front of you to hold forth what God's put in my heart. So, it's been a while. Well, I want to teach today on wisdom. It's going to be a little bit different. So, strap on your seatbelts. So, I started looking at this over a year ago. Wisdom, there's 222 verses in the Word. And the word is used 234 times, and there's 13 different Hebrew words that are translated wisdom. I looked at every single verse in its context, went down a lot of rabbit holes, went a lot of different places, took lots and lots of notes. I thought I wanted to share that with you today, and then I was with God in prayer, and I believe that this is what He wants me to share as an older person to our younger people. So could you put that picture up, Casey, that I sent to you? My nephew Luke and his new wife, Devin, went down there last weekend. They got married. Devin is the daughter of the founder of the Church of Highlands, which is the second largest church in the country, with over 43,000 people in attendance each week. Devin already has her master's in theology. And Luke is a wonderful man of God. And this is for them. If there's anything that I can teach them, this is what I want them to know. Okay, so here we go. In the Old Testament, wisdom is considered by some an intellectual virtue. It's intensely practical, and it's not theoretical. Basically, wisdom is the art of being successful, of forming the correct plan to gain the desired results. Its seat is in the heart, the center of moral and intellectual decisions. Practical wisdom may take on a sinister aspect, such as the advice that Jonadab gave Ammon in 2 Samuel 13, and we're going to be spending some time looking at that. Kings and leaders were in special need of wisdom. They were responsible for correct decisions in political and social affairs. Joshua, David, and Solomon were granted wisdom to enable them to deal with official duties. The Messianic king, according to Isaiah 11, was to be equipped with wisdom to judge impartially. He's called the Wonderful Counselor. During the monarchy, a special class of wise men and women seemed to have developed. By Jeremiah's time, they had taken their place beside prophets and priests as a major religion and social influence. They were tasked with the responsibility of formulating workable plans to prescribe advice for successful living. You can see that in Jeremiah 18:18. For the view that wise men described not a professional class, but persons of uncommon intelligence, whose wisdom was sought after by their fellow citizens. By and large, New Testament wisdom, it's the word Sophia, has the same intensely practical nature as in the Old Testament. It's seldom neutral. It's either God-given or it's God-opposing. If it doesn't align itself with God's revelation, it is destitute and unproductive at best, which can be seen in 1 Corinthians 1:17, 2:4, and 2 Corinthians 1:2. According to 1 Corinthians 1:19 and James 3:15, it is foolish or even devilish. Worldly wisdom is based on intuition and experience without revelation, and thus has severe limitations. The failure to recognize these limitations brings biblical condemnation. The truly wise are those to whom God has graciously imparted wisdom. Solomon is spoken of in Matthew 12:42 and Luke 11:31. Stephen spoken about in Acts 6:10. Paul in 2 Peter 3:15. And Joseph in Acts 7:10. Wisdom is not only essential for leaders of the church, but it's necessary for all believers in order to walk worthily. So I started this quest on understanding more about wisdom when I was reading in Proverbs one day. And if you're not familiar with eSword, it is a wonderful tool for biblical research. Has the Strong's numbering systems right there. So I don't mind a lot of numbers. I can read around that. But I was reading this, and this really struck me. Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of high places by the way, in the places of the paths. She cries at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming at the doors. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom. Well, when I was looking at that, O ye simple, you who are easily seduced, understand wisdom. It's not the same word. This wisdom is orma. It means trickery. It comes from the root, meaning craftiness. God does not want us to be ignorant of Satan's devices. We are in a spiritual battle. And if you truly love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength, and you live for Him, you are in a battle. Because you think the adversary is going to just let you go unchecked. Trust me, I got a lot of white hair. Yeah. So anyway, let's look at this worldly wisdom. We're going to go to 2 Samuel 11. I'm going to be doing a lot of reading, but I think these records, a lot of us still live in the Old Testament. And we're dealing with a lot of stuff that we shouldn't be dealing with. Jesus Christ laid down his life. There's power in that name. If you have Jesus Christ in your heart, you shouldn't be living through a lot of this stuff that you're living through. Every chain ought to be broken and fallen off of you. I can be a bit confrontational. All right, 2 Samuel 11. And it came to pass after the year was expired, at the time when the kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all of Israel of Ammon, and besieged Rabbah, but David tarried still in Jerusalem. And it came to pass in an evening time that David rose his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messages and took her. And she came in unto him, and he laid with her. And she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. Now, that's not saying that she was purified because David laid with her. He was some king, and somehow. No, it's pretty bluntly, it means that she just finished her period. And the woman conceived and sent and told David and said, I am with child. And David sent to Joab, saying, This is a tragedy. This story is an absolute tragedy. So I want you to pay attention to what's going on here. And when Uriah was come unto him, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. I mean, golly, here's Uriah coming to see the king. I mean, that had to be such an honor to stand in the king's presence. And the king has done this horrible thing, and now he's deceiving. Acting like everything's okay, like he's all concerned about Uriah. Oh, how's it going? How's Joab? And David said to Uriah, Go down to thy house and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. Oh, gifts. Just let me give you a bunch of gifts. And Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of the Lord, and went not down to his house. And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down to his house, David said unto Uriah, Camest thou not from thy journey? Why then dost thou not go down unto thine house? You want to see a real man of God? Uriah. And Uriah said unto David, The ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in open fields. Shall I then go into mine house and eat and drink and lie with my wife? As thou livest, and as thou soul liveth, I will not do this thing. What a man. Guess what? He didn't have the Spirit of Christ in him, but he had some restraint. He had some discipline. And David said to Uriah, Tarry here today also, and tomorrow I'll let thee depart. So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the morrow. And when David called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And even that evening he went down to lie in his bed with the servants of the Lord, and he went down to his house. Yeah. Alcohol, drugs. Come on. You know, people prey on those that are weak. If you're given to alcohol, you're given to drugs, you're weak. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but you are. But I think God's angry. I think he's upset that his people are being preyed upon. If you're given to wine and alcohol and all that, you don't think the adversary knows that he can compromise you? That you think you're such a strong, standing believer, and the adversary is going to give you a drink, and what happens? You compromise all your standards and your beliefs. You think that makes God happy? It doesn't. All right, so David, great guy. I thought, well, that's man's wisdom. We'll get him drunk and maybe he'll go in to be with his wife. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter saying, set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire you from him, that ye may be smitten and die. And it came to pass when Joab observed the city that he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew valiant men would be. David had Uriah killed. That great, wonderful, faithful, strong man of God, David had him killed. All right, now I'm going to jump to chapter 12. Well, before I do that, interesting translation. In the 27th verse of chapter 11, and when the morning was past, David sent and fetched Bathsheba to his house, and she became his wife and bare a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. Displeased the Lord. That means he was, a little upset, a little disappointed. It's an outcry. It was an absolute outcry. He was a little more than displeased. So here you see a true prophet of God. And the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him and said unto him, there were two men in one city, the one rich, David, the other poor, Uriah. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, David, and the poor man had nothing save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished, and it grew up together with him and with his children, and he did eat his own meat and drank of his own cup and lay in his bosom, and it was as unto him as a daughter. As a daughter. You know, in my life, I've seen a lot of different men in a lot of different settings. And the way men look at women and how they think about women can be pretty disturbing. But you give them their daughter, and it's a whole different story, isn't it? That's my daughter. He'll fight for the death to protect his daughter. I saw that in Devin's father when I was talking to him about the powerful ministry that Devin has. I looked at her on YouTube, and when she walked out to the youth and the applause from the young people, it was amazing. It made my hair stand up. And I mentioned that to him. I said, what a powerful ministry your daughter has. And his face, I knew what he was thinking. That's my baby girl. And I'm giving her over to this man, and I have to trust him to love her as I've loved her, to fight for her, to protect her. It's a little bit different when it's a daughter. Oh, all right. And there came a traveler unto the rich man. All right, let's stop right there. You're looking at the story that Nathan's telling, and you see, it's talking about Uriah. There's all these correlations, but there was no traveler. Or was there? There came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd, to dress for the wayfaring man, That means somebody that travels on foot and doesn't really stick around. They're not really living anywhere. They're just passing through town. The wayfaring man that was come unto him, and he took the poor man's lamb and dressed it for the man that was come to him. I'll just come right out straight. That's a spirit of lust. That's what the wayfaring man is. That's what David had to feed, was the spirit of lust. Direct? Yeah, direct. Whoa. You know, it's really hard to see it when it's happening in your own life, but you can certainly see it when it goes on in someone else's. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, as the Lord liveth, and the man that has done this thing shall surely die. He was enraged. Oh my God, who could have done such a horrible thing? And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, thou art the man. And then David fell on his face and said, I've sinned before God. I understand God's grace and God's forgiveness and all of that, but don't emphasize it to the point that you don't see how devilish this stuff is. We have to open our eyes. We have to wake up for the young people. We have to tell them we all were a part of something that was great and wonderful. Maybe like the Church of the Highlands at one time that had 43,000 or even bigger. What took us out? You think we ought to start talking about it? Instead of saying, oh, yeah, you know, but God forgave and David did this and, you know, David was great and David was wonderful. You know, God forgive me. I think these things in the Old Testament are here for a learning. David wrote a lot of great things in the Bible. But most of the hell he went through was because of what he did right here. He lost it here. And he never got it back. I don't know what could have been. I don't know what could have been. It could have been amazing. But it was the sex that took him out. Okay. Anyway, Nathan goes on to prophesy to David about what was going to happen. First of all, the child that Bathsheba had was going to die, wasn't going to live. 13, and David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord also has put away thy sin, thou shalt not die. Howbeit, because of this deed, thou hast great occasion, have given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme. The child also that is born unto thee shall surely die. And Nathan departed unto the house of the Lord, and the child died. I mean, he just lays it out about what was going to happen. One of the things he said that was going to happen, it was his own household that was going to vex him. This sin wasn't going to go away. You want to talk about generational sin. So when you think I'm not hurting anybody, no one's going to know. Surprise. Yeah. Anyway. So here it continues in chapter 13. And it came to pass after this that Absalom was David's third son. He had a fair sister, and her name was Tamar. And Ammon, the son of David, another son of David, this was the first son. He loved her. And Ammon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar. for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab. Remember I said this wise man, or the men of wisdom, could take on a very sinister? Okay. So, as spirit-filled men and women of God, we would do ourselves a big favor if we went to God and asked him for wisdom and what to do. A lot of times, we have no confidence in ourselves. Why? I don't know. I'm finally finding it. Because I know my frailties. But you ask everyone else around you what they think. What's your advice? What do you think? And advice is good, but you know what? When it comes to life-changing decisions, you better be asking the one who knows, especially if it impacts somebody else's life. Because we're all going to give an account someday. And what are you going to tell God when you stand there? Well, Joe said, and Sally told me, not going to fly. You're going to be responsible for the decisions that you make. Just go to him. All right. I said I wasn't going to get off track and go on these. Anyway, what happens with Jonadab? He said unto him, lay thee down on the bed and pretend that you're sick. And when the father comes to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come and give me meat. So he does this elaborate thing, goes by what Jonadab told him to do. Was that godly wisdom? No, that's man and his wisdom. So anyway, it sets up this whole elaborate scheme. Tamar comes, and Amnon ends up raping her. Now, in that day and time, that's not a good thing. He's destroyed her life. He's ruined her. Well, Absalom was pretty upset about it. He was pretty upset. And it said that David was mad. But I didn't see David do anything about it either. I don't know, maybe David was thinking, hey, I wasn't any saint. Look what I did. Who am I to talk? We can't afford to think that way. We've been born again. We've been cleansed from all unrighteousness. We've been given the ministry of reconciliation. It doesn't matter what we've done. If David could forgive if God could forgive David, he can forgive us, right? Yeah. Are we afraid of being exposed? Maybe we ought to expose ourselves. Maybe we should stop being afraid and start telling our young people where the pitfalls are and how we got deceived. Maybe we can save them. Maybe we can build some solid ground under their feet. So anyway, there's Tamar. She's ruined. That's running in David's family. And then Absalom, he's really angry, and he doesn't say anything good or bad. He just shuts his mouth and says nothing. But he plots for 2 years. And after 2 years, this is what people call being wise. Okay? This is what I'm going to do, because I'm going to get my way, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. In order to do that, I have to set the stage. Sorry. So here's Absalom goes to his dad and says, hey, I want to have a get-together. Come with me. And David, I can't go with you. Well, how about I take Amnon? How about all your sons go? We're all going to go. We're all just going to hang out and have a good time. So David goes, okay, yeah, go ahead. So he takes him out, and Absalom tells his men, I'm going to get Amnon drunk. And as soon as he's drunk, you're going to kill him. That's what happened. Oops, sorry. So, you can see this all goes back to, not that David killed Uriah, that was horrible. He had sex with Bathsheba. He didn't control his lust. That's where it all started. Be honest, that's where it all started. I get upset about this. I've seen some things in my life. I've seen lives destroyed. I've seen people ripped apart. I've seen people not come back, not recover. So it's serious stuff. And then the same thing with alcohol. You know how much tragedy I've seen in my life due to alcohol? People dying, dead, gone forever. The one common denominator of all the tragedy throughout my family was alcohol. You bring it up, you think if, they weren't drinking. Oh, you can't say that. You can't say that. That's fate. You don't have control over all these things. Whatever you do, don't take away my alcohol. Just saying. These things destroy you. Okay, so he has Amnon killed, and then David says, Absalom kills Amnon and then takes off and goes to Gershom for 2 years and stays out there. And David doesn't want him back, I guess. And then Joab, who is close to David after a couple of years, Joab notices that he's done grieving his son and he's starting to miss Absalom. So Joab devises another plan with his wisdom. And he gets a wise woman, to play a part and pretend that she's some grieving widow, and to go to David and to tell David this big elaborate story that kind of coincides with what's going on with Absalom and David. And, David's heart goes out to her, and he's like, listen, I'm going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to let anybody touch you. No one's going to hurt you. No one's going to hurt your family. You got me behind you, blah, blah, blah. And then she turns around and comes right out and says, like, you are the man. Just like Nathan did, kind of. Oh, well, you're going to do this for me, but what about your own son, Absalom? That's been out for 2 years, and he's not welcome back in the city. Well, by that time, David catches on a little bit and says, did Joab put you up to this? And she said, yeah. So he's like, oh, okay. And then I guess he thought, well, if someone's going to go to that extreme to get my attention, then maybe I should consider it. And he does, and he lets Absalom back in. So Absalom's there for a couple of years. David, he still hasn't seen David's face. That's all right. They don't show up immediately. They kind of creep in. So Absalom is getting a little impatient, and he wants this thing to get moving. So he sends for Joab, and Joab didn't come. So he sends for him again, and he doesn't come. So then he says, I have a plan. This is a wise idea. I'm going to have my people set Joab's barley field on fire. So he sets it on fire. Now that's going to get your attention. So Joab comes back. He goes, why'd you set my field on fire? He goes, because I'm trying to get for you for 2 years. I sent for you twice. You don't come. He said, I'm here, and I don't even get to see my dad. I'm here, but I'm not a part of things. So Joab goes back to David and talks to him, and David goes, yeah, well, bygones be bygones. Let's put all this behind us, and let's move on. So he brings Absalom in, and Absalom falls at his feet, and he kisses him, and all the stuff that you go through to show people just how sincere you are. We're not supposed to be flattered. We're supposed to be not ignorant. Okay? If you get offended a little bit because somebody just doesn't let you in because you bounce up all bubbly and happy and you got this great personality and you just want to help, and they kind of like put a wall up, they might have a reason, because God tells us to do it. You got to pay attention. So anyway, David lets Absalom back in, and Absalom, he's back as usual. First thing he does, gets a chariot, has 50 men running in front of him everywhere he goes. Because, he's the king's son. Wants everybody to know who he is. He wants to make a name for himself. I love the songs. There's one name. Jesus Christ. That's the only name we ought to be exalting. So, anyway, that's what he does. He sets up this thing so everybody knows who he is, and then he goes down to the gate, because people would come all the time to see the king. For what? Wise counsel, to get advice. So they'd come to see David, and Absalom's sitting down at the gate, and he's intercepting, meeting these people. Hey, what are you here for? Well, we wanted to see the king. Oh, the king don't care about you. The king's so busy. Here, let me help you. What can I help you with? So they start talking to Absalom. Oh, Absalom was gorgeous. I guess he was absolutely beautiful. So they started talking to Absalom, and it started to go on, and pretty soon Absalom stole the hearts of the people. So they no longer were seeking after David. They were all going after Absalom. And then Absalom decides he wants the kingdom. He wants it all. And he wants to kill his father and take him out. And on and on and on it goes. That's all man's wisdom. The Old Testament's full of it. The Old Testament's written for our learning. I know we have the New Testament. And that's what's addressed to us. And I spent a great deal of time in the New Testament learning who I am in Christ, all that God has given to me, all that God has made me. I'm almost 70 years old. Okay. I don't have a lot of time left. I don't know how much. I can't imagine I have a whole lot. I think it's about time I started doing something with what God has given me. Maybe it's too late for me, but I got a young nephew who's just starting out. And I'm sure a lot of you people, you have children, you have, the young people in this ministry that are just starting out. And they really want to get a work going. They have got to know these things. They can't be easily seduced. Being a Christian isn't all, what do they call that? What do they call that? Hugs and kisses, different things like that. Yeah, I'm a Christian, and I'm not pretty cuddly. I'm pretty prickly a lot of the times. People that work with me, they're like, you have a job, you got to get it done, and yeah, I like to be loved. I like to be cared for, just like everybody else, but come on. Is that all I want? Oh, this is a funny story. I got to tell you this. my nephew Matthias, we were at his house visiting, and he has a 4-year-old son. Now, Matthias is 57. He's got a 4-year-old son. They're all laughing about, going to be my age when he graduates high school. But anyway, his wife is from Ireland, and she picks him up. He had a soccer game that he was going to, and she picks him up. Oh, my little darling, wouldn't you like to stay home with your mom? Wouldn't you like to cuddle on the couch and just be nice and say, you want to go play soccer? You want to go get hurt? You could fall down and get hurt. Wouldn't you like to stay with your mommy? And he goes, no, put me down. She was kidding, all the time. I guess she probably knew what he was going to say. Okay, so moving on. I guess I've been at this for a while. Let's move on to the New Testament. How's that sound? Yeah. So, Mal, before we go to the New Testament, I'm going to go to Proverbs. Because the book of Proverbs, the word wisdom is used a lot. Of course, that's where I started in reading the book of Proverbs. But Proverbs is written to our young people. The proverb of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. This is the reason that Proverbs was written, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive words of understanding. Let me see what this, go back to my notes now. It gives us the purpose or the intentions for writing Proverbs. This is to know, underscored, know, wisdom and instruction, which is properly chastisement and figuratively reproof, warning or instruction, also restraint. And it's, let me see. And to receive instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. And it's to give subtlety to the simple. To the young men, knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain to wise counsel. To understand a proverb, that's another reason, and the interpretation and the words of the wise and their dark sayings. Now that wise are men like Joadab and people like that, to understand their words and their dark sayings, So anyway, Ecclesiastes, well, let's just go there because Solomon was the wisest man. You get so used to these Bible programs, and I have found myself without a computer or any other thing, so I've been doing all this the old-fashioned way, with my books and pen and paper and all that. You can see all this stuff here. But Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived, I say, outside of Jesus Christ. And he went through it all, figured it all out, and he summed it down with this. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter.
Chapter and verse.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you all knew. Ecclesiastes 12:13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And as a king, having to make right decisions, having to do this, having to do that, it's imperative that you hear the conclusion of the whole matter. And the only way you're going to do that is by investigating. You don't just take somebody's word for something, especially if they're talking to you about somebody else. You know, we had this thing in human resources where they always want to come to your office and complain about somebody else. So I get out my piece of paper and my pen, and I go, okay, your name, and this is the date, this is the time. All right, what is it you want to say about this person? I said, well, write it down, and when you're done, I'll read it back to you to make sure I have it correct. And then once you sign off on it, I'll bring them in here, and I'll go over this with them. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Well, what do you want to do? I'm sorry. I guess I just had a bad day. Or whatever. That one's taken care of. You know, it's so effective. Trust me. But when, you don't flatter yourself that people want to come to you and tell you of their problems and talk to you about this one and that one and this and that and everything else. That's, if they're coming to you, they better be coming to you because they want help. And they want to be accountable and responsible for their own life actions and their decisions. Then you can truly help them. Otherwise, they might be wasting your time. Maybe. I don't know. Okay. Colossians 1, 9 through 13. I'll wrap it up here. I hope you think it was worth it. Okay. This is the everyday believer. Colossians 1:9, for this cause we also, since the day we heard of it, do not cease to pray for you, and to desire that ye might be filled with knowledge of his will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might according to his glorious power, unto all patience and long-suffering, and with joyfulness, giving thanks unto the Father, which hath made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light. Let me just say this. We got God and Christ in us. He's in us. Well, you know that, can we go to James 1? Sorry. James chapter 1, I guess it's, I have it written down somewhere. I've completely abandoned my notes. Although I stayed on track pretty good. James 1:5. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. That's God telling us that he'll give us wisdom if we go to him. So, why do we not go to him? Why do we have to go to this person and that person and everybody else? Because you don't trust what God's telling you, maybe? Maybe, I don't know why. But I'm just thinking, as we get older, as we become more mature, as we have a greater understanding, we start to realize that this is serious business, very serious business that God's called us to. And he's entrusted us with his word. And we've got to tell people about it. We've got to tell our young people. And if you need wisdom on how to tell your young people, ask God. He's not gonna turn you away. He's going to give it to you abundantly. So you have God and Christ in you. I hope this wakes us up when it comes to our young people. And yes, it's important that people know that they're loved and they're cared about, and, you know, so on and so forth, but it's not all hugs and kisses. Sometimes it's a little hard. And, you know, we got to get tough. Hey, let me just tell you this. It was over 30 years ago. You know, I used to do the advanced class department, and I got a newspaper article that said, it was written by homosexuals, and they said, "We are not going away. We are coming after you," and this is how they said it, this is how I read it, "We are going to shove it down your throats." Those were the words. "We are going to shove it down your throats. We're going to be on television. You're going to see men kissing men, women kissing women, and sooner or later you're going to go, it's no big deal." And then the part that scared me the most, he said, "And after we've done that, we're coming after your children." So we need to wake up. God bless you.